Reacher Season 2 just started on Amazon Prime. They released the first 3 episodes all at once, and now it'll be weekly from here on out. Reacher Season 2 is based on the book you can see on screen, Bad Luck and Trouble. Each season so far has been based on a book, from my understanding. I haven't read the series, but I believe the way that they're written is any book can be read on its own, and they're not one long story. If you like the first season, this one has the same feel to it, except much faster paced. It's very reminiscent of like 80s and 90s action. You just have some big ass dude beating up guys, shooting them, hooking up with chicks. He's kind of just a wandering man who wants to keep to himself, and trouble finds him, so he takes care of it. That's kind of Reacher's whole deal. Alan Ritchson is good in it. This season, obviously it's a new group of people, except for Neely, who they introduced last season. And then you get introduced to more of the 1/10th, which is his unit. So I don't want to say too much, because this is one that you should go watch yourself. If you're into just kind of fun action and violence, pretty straightforward characters and story, it's a show that I think most people will enjoy. It's not going to change your life. It's not some super philosophical, deep story that's going to change your morals or make you question your values. It's just entertainment, which is how most things used to be, which was nice. This scene's from the trailer, not really a spoiler. This is like 2 minutes into the show. He's at an ATM. He can see that the woman had been kind of beat up and asked her if she was carjacked. He goes and beats the shit out of the guy and says, "Hey, call the cops." Rescues the kid, tells the woman no problem, and is on his way. He's just a cool guy. And, you know, there's definitely some writing issues and some contrivances and very convenient things happen, but you can be pretty forgiving of that when the tone of the show is just, we're going to have him beat people up and fight bad guys. It's going to be clear who the villains are, clear who the good guys are, and the story keeps moving. Even in the first 3 episodes, a bunch of shit happens. Especially if you compare it to a show like Ahsoka or Monarch, where you get these really meandering plots. You don't really get any character development. They fit a lot of that in here in the first couple episodes, because you see the current day timeline where he starts out in Arkansas. Most of the season takes place in New York, but he starts off in Arkansas. Neely sends him a thing in his ATM. It's a numerical code that says, "Hey, I need help," and it's the amount in his bank account. So then he reaches out to Neely, because he doesn't have a cell phone or anything. The only thing he has are the clothes on his back until he can't wear them anymore. Then he trades them into the thrift shop and a toothbrush. And then he just bounces around from motels and friends and whatever. So the way that the show works is current day, you see what's going on. Past, you see the 1/10th, and you kind of get to know that group of people, because this season, it starts off with a guy falling out of a helicopter, and you see that the 1/10th is very heavily involved in it, which is his group of special investigators. So that's kind of the gist of it. I like the dynamic between all of them. They kind of talk shit to each other. There's a girl who's good with numbers. You have a guy who's kind of the goofball and the ass end of the jokes. You have Reacher, who's in charge and he's kind of serious. You have Neely, who really likes to keep to herself and she doesn't like to be touched, and she just does her own thing. So everybody's got their own personalities and backgrounds, and, you know, they're all just good friends who became close through the military, which is Reacher's background. And here you can see they're talking in a diner. She's explaining what's going on. She's brought the evidence. It's pretty exposition heavy, but it's nice how much they fit in. Like, this is like a 3 or 4 minute scene, and it sets up the entire case and what's going on just by them going through this case file, and you get right into it. There's no fucking around. There's no wasted time. There's not a ton of extraneous drama. Everything serves a purpose to help you get to know the characters and their dynamics and to move the story forward. So they really cover a lot in a short amount of time, which is nice. And from this point out, I'm just going to talk vaguely about it, but there could be spoilers, so just a heads up. Here's Reacher and Neely interviewing the widow of the guy who died. He was one of their special investigations unit people. And something they do throughout the first couple episodes that I really like is all of the other characters have a photo. It's the same photo hung up in their house of the whole unit together, like one night when they were out drinking. And they all have it in their office or their house or whatever. You can tell it was a really meaningful time for them. But Reacher is kind of the loner. He doesn't even have a wall to hang the picture on. He doesn't really have anything. He's just on his own. And there's an interesting conversation they have about it later on. I'm not going to say what happens. I can't tell if they're making him question this lifestyle or if he just embraces that this is who he is. He wants total freedom as just kind of the wandering man. I don't know. It's an interesting thing because I feel like he's so unusual compared to most people. I mean, most people want a house. They want stability. especially if you have a family and kids. And I could see how, if you have a certain personality type, you could view that as very restricting, but he seems to like it. So it makes him an interesting character. So they're talking to the widow, and this is one of those exposition scenes that I was talking about where they're asking kind of basic questions. She's giving the information. He liked these things. He was in these places. This is where he worked, blah, blah, blah. I haven't seen him in this amount of time. They figure something out that's not too crazy, and they're on their way. And this is kind of the formula for the story, is just get a piece of evidence, link it to something, move on. And it's nice because it makes the characters at least seem logical without making it very convoluted and complex and kind of having to pull shit out of your ass to figure stuff out. Although they do that a couple of times, which it's a bit annoying, but with a show like this, I think you'd be more accepting of that than if you were watching like Sherlock or something. And another thing Reacher does, and they do this in season 1 too, is they show you some stuff with the bad guys. So like these are the antagonists for the season, this is what's going on, and this is what Reacher is trying to figure out. It all makes for a very straightforward, just easy to digest story. And there's actually a pretty funny moment here where he has a guy, this is Langston, he's the main working in the shadows villain antagonist type guy, obviously how old he is. He's talking on his phone to his henchman, and the henchman's like, hey, they went to this hotel, they didn't sign in under their own names, they signed in under one guy's name who's an old Yankees player. I guess that's one of Reacher's things in the books, is he always uses old Yankees players as references, and that's his team and whatever. And Neely signed in as Sarah Connor. And this guy, if you can't recognize him, is the T-1000 in Terminator 2. He's just a lot older now, obviously. And it's pretty funny. He goes, Sarah Connor? Who the hell is that? It's a really like on-the-nose, cheesy meta joke, but it did catch me so off guard that I started laughing. So I guess it worked, at least for the one time. And this is one of those kind of ass-pull things that I was talking about. They go investigate their dead friend's office. If you had something you want to keep secure, you keep it close by, right? And the keys are on the floor. She grabs the keys, and the post office is straight across the street. So they have to go across the street and figure out which box it is. All very kind of ass-pully, but it keeps the plot moving. And it's a show that I don't expect exceptional writing, just functional enough to make the action scenes interesting. And if you have good characters, which they all are, they have good chemistry, they bounce off each other well, they have their own personalities, then you can forgive a very loosely tethered together plot. Obviously, if the characters suck and the plot makes no sense and there's no action or the action sucks, then it's a different story. They get what they need, they go back to the hotel for the night to try to figure out their next move. And this is the kind of stuff where the show slows down a little bit, but it's productive. So they're talking about their time in the 110th and the other people in the unit and how they miss them and certain things about them. And then we get a flashback so you can see what their relationship was like. So we get the flashback, they're all kind of talking. Reacher has handpicked this unit of kind of oddballs, and he wants them to get along so they have chemistry for their objectives. So he takes them to this place where they're all supposed to be officers. You're not supposed to be lower ranked. And Neely is only, I think she's a sergeant. I'm not military, even though like half my family is, so I should probably know that. But Neely, I think, is a sergeant, so she's not supposed to be there. These guys are dicks, and they come up, and Reacher's like, leave us alone. Like, these are my group, and I think it's okay. And what you find out is that Reacher knew how they would be, he knew the rules, and he wanted to make sure that everyone essentially went through a fight together that was meaningless to kind of bond the unit. So Neely says thanks, and they're all having beers and singing by the campfire and having fun. And this is where they take the photo that reappears throughout the entire show so far. So you can tell just from this flashback how they get along, the dynamics, that Reacher's a good leader. He prioritizes his men. He obviously understands leadership and how to make a unit work. And this is all done in like a 5 to 10 minute stretch. And that's how the whole show is. Everything is very dense, and there's not really any wasted time, which is nice. It's also nice to see a show with kind of intimidating and clever villains. This guy is one of the antagonists. We don't know his exact role yet, just that he's working with the T-1000. And he's pretty intimidating. He's kind of hiding and clever. We see him immediately, gets through airport security using his passport, burns the passport in the bathroom, changing IDs as he goes. Very simple, but very effective way to show right away he's not a moron. And this is the kind of, I wouldn't call it dark humor, but a little bit, where they've gotten the stuff they need from the post office. Reacher realizes that he needs a weapon, like Master Chief. And he's like, I think I'm going to go to church. So he goes to the church, and he's like pretending to look for his drug addict brother. And he's like, do you know where they get their scores from? And the guy immediately tells him, like, they all get their drugs from here, but it's really dangerous. You should stay away. Obviously, when Reacher said that he wanted to go to church, he was going to get a firearm that had probably been illegally obtained so that he didn't feel bad stealing it, and then it couldn't be traced back to him. So he goes up to the drug dealers, beats their asses, takes their guns. Now he's got a weapon. And this is another thing that shows drive me crazy with, is letting the characters do immoral things to innocent bystanders. By setting it up this way, he's kind of being a vigilante and he shouldn't be doing it, but he's beating up drug dealers who a lot of people are overdosing on their drugs. So do you really care? And it's also smart because he's avoiding using a firearm registered to himself because he plans on using it. There's very simple but effective storytelling throughout is really how I would sum up the show. This is our dark-haired antagonist again. You can see him getting his new passport from a connection that he made, presumably through the T-1000 or whoever. And the guy gives him the passport. He goes, you can get anywhere with that. No one's going to know who you are. And he immediately goes, but you know. Slits his throat, catches his partner, stabs him in the belly, leaves him, and he's good to go. So this guy's had like 5 minutes of screen time. And already we understand that he's at least somewhat clever and ruthless and is going to get the job done. So you created a functioning villain, a group of pretty good friends from the military, and personality types, and a basic plot of we want to find the guy who murdered our friend in 45 minutes of the first episode. Reacher and Neely get back to their hotel. Somebody's been in there, so they're alert. They've got their guns. Ends up being their old buddy from the 110th, O'Donnell. They've got their thumb drive from the mailroom that their dead friend had, and they plug it in, and they have 2 minutes to guess the password. They only get 3 guesses. And this is one of the show's probably lowest moments. It's a total ass pull where they're like trying to profile the guy very quickly on the stuff that he cared about and guess the password. And they guess Clemente, they guess somebody else, and the right answer ends up being Reacher. But none of these have numbers. And it's like, if you had a guy this paranoid, he would absolutely have numbers and symbols and some kind of crazy ass password. On top of the fact that could anyone really profile a password in like 2 seconds with 3 guesses? I doubt if you asked every person who knew me, who I didn't share a password with, they would never guess it. So it's just one of those things that I don't like when they do that, because that's like way worse than the kind of stretching with the mail key. This is like, well, we want the plot to keep going. So not a huge fan of this scene, but you know, it's a bad moment in a mostly good show, so you can let it slide. They go to find another guy from the 110th. They find his dog shut into the bathroom and the toilet bowl empty, so they realized he dehydrated to death. And they know that the guy loved his dog, so he must be dead because he wouldn't let that happen. And along the way, we get some stuff with O'Donnell where they're talking about how domesticated he is and how wild he used to be, and they can't believe that he has kids and stuff now. And they're making jokes about his skill level and stuff. So you're getting all this character stuff, again, in like a 5-minute stretch. You have a really good idea of who these people are. And this is something that bad shows really struggle with. For example, Ahsoka. If you hadn't seen Clone Wars or Rebels, you would have no idea who those characters were, other than they're all kind of assholes. But I don't want to keep going about that. So that's the end of episode 1. It's a really good first episode. Gets you right into it. Plenty of action. Gets moving fast. You know who all the big players are. You know what their motivations are and their personality types. So yeah, it's great to see that it's picking up where it left off for people who care. There's like no political stuff in it, which is so refreshing. And it's kind of sad that that's where the bar has fallen, is like, is there a coherent plot, decent characters, decent action, and no politics? And that's like the bar for stuff that you want to watch now, because everything is just such trash. But relatively speaking, this is definitely one of the better things being streamed right now. So go check it out. I don't want to keep going. Just go watch it yourself. And I'm not sure if I'm going to keep covering the rest of the season because the show is pretty straightforward. So I'm undecided. But I at least wanted to give the first episode a shout out and say, hey, go watch it. So if you're here, you know, comment. Let me know what you think of the show. How much do the contrivances bother you? Do you not care? And I do try to respond to every comment that I get, as long as it's not just somebody calling me retarded or an incel or telling me that I don't know what a hug is. So yeah, let me know what you think, and like and subscribe and all that shit. See ya. Thanks.